Okay, Jesus said in Matthew 5:19, do and teach God's law. This is God's law number 37, seed science and crop production. Here is God's law number 37 from God's law book of Deuteronomy in chapter 22, verse 9. Quote, do not plant two kinds of seed in your vineyard. If you do, not only the crops you plant, but also the fruit of the vineyard will be defiled. End quote. What could be the rationale behind this simple biblical agricultural law? At first glance, it may seem to be a simple agricultural guideline, but a closer examination reveals layers of cultural, spiritual, and practical reasoning behind the injunction. Why would mixing seeds in a vineyard result in a kind of defilement, and how might this prohibition have served the early Israelites, and maybe no less so God's people today? Historical and agricultural context. To understand the rationale, it's important to begin with the broader context of ancient agricultural practices. Vineyards were highly valued in the ancient Near East, not only economically but also symbolically. The vine and its fruit, wine, represented prosperity, blessing, and even spiritual joy in the Hebrew Bible. The agricultural techniques of the time were rooted in tradition and careful observation of the land's productivity. Planting two kinds of seed in a single field, especially a vineyard, could lead to issues of competition for vital resources such as water, sunlight, and soil nutrients. Certain plants may dominate and suppress the growth of others, leading to the diminished yields of altered qualities in both the new crops and the grapes. Moreover, some crops may harbor pests or diseases that could threaten the health of the entire vineyard. From a practical standpoint, some ancients would not have known that mixing crops could compromise not only the harvest but also the purity and thus the reputation of their vineyard. The commandment, therefore, can be seen as a wise directive to protect agricultural integrity and the economic well-being of God's people. Symbolic purity and holiness. Beyond practical concerns, Deuteronomy 22:9 is part of a series of laws emphasizing separation and holiness. The concept of holiness in Hebrew carries the idea of being set apart, distinct from ordinary or profane. Throughout God's law, God's people are encouraged to maintain clear boundaries in healthy diets, clothing, and even their fields. The prohibition against mixing seeds is echoed in other passages such as Leviticus 19:19, which forbids sowing two kinds of seed in the same field, breeding different kinds of animals, and wearing garments made of mixed fabrics. These guidelines reinforce the importance of order and distinction, a reflection of vocation as a people set apart for a unique relationship with their Creator. In this sense, planting two kinds of seed in a vineyard even compromises a vineyard's symbolic purity. The vineyard, like God's people, is to remain unmingled and distinct, serving as a living metaphor for spiritual integrity and obedience. Legal implications. The consequences described in Deuteronomy 22:9, where both the crops and the fruit of the vineyard are defiled, carry legal and ritual significance. The Hebrew word translated defiled can mean, quote, forbidden or unfit or set apart for destruction. In other words, the produce from the mixed vineyard would not be allowed for healthy consumption and trade. Cultural identity and social cohesion. Another layer of meaning may also relate to cultural identity. Laws concerning separation and distinction can play a role in fostering a communal bond among God's people. In a world where neighboring societies practice perverse forms of agriculture, worship, and social decadence, this law may even serve to mark God's people as a wise and unique people. By prohibiting agricultural mixtures, the law can reinforce a sense of collective discipline and purpose. The fields and vineyards would even be a visual reminder of God's people's shared values and commitment to God. Possible health and ecological reasons. There may also be health or ecological reasons behind the law. Ancient agriculture practices were not always fully understood, and certain combinations of plants can create unforeseen problems. For example, interplanting crops that are incompatible can lead to reduced yields, attract unwanted pests, or introduce diseases that affect both the crops and the vines. Theological reflections. At a deeper level, the prohibition against mixing seeds in the vineyard can be seen as a theological reflection on the nature of creation and order. The biblical worldview emphasizes the goodness of creation and the importance of maintaining boundaries. Each species, each kind, is given its own place and purpose. Respecting these boundaries are healthy, as well as acknowledging the wisdom and sovereignty of the Creator. The law thus serves as a daily affirmation of God's created order, a reminder that mixing what was meant to be distinct could lead to unintended consequences, both spiritually and materially. Contemporary perspectives. Most today don't realize how much practical wisdom is contained in God's law, from crop rotation, mixed seeding, environmental stewardship, genetic modification, and the preservation of biodiversity. This law may reflect on the importance of boundaries, integrity, and respect for the God-created world. It shows the value of order, the dangers of unchecked mixing, and ways in which physical practices support spiritual truths. To conclude, the prohibition in Deuteronomy 22:9 against planting two kinds of seed in a vineyard may reflect more than a quaint agricultural rule. It is a statement about the nature of purity, order, and even community. The law may reflect practical wisdom and spiritual insight, serving to even unite God's people, safeguard their prosperity, and set them apart as a holy nation. Whether the concern was agricultural competition, legal discipline, or cultural identity, the commandment drew clear lines that shape daily life and spiritual consciousness. Today we can see the wisdom of this law historically and ecologically. It is a call to thoughtful agricultural stewardship and respect for the distinctiveness of all that God created.